Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lawrence Chaney. On Monday, I spoke about the 5 W's as it relates to black people in the United States. And I specified that the 5 W's was who, what, when, where, and why, which pretty much sums up our history in the United States. But for those who are not clear about the 5 W's, let me put it in another perspective. What I have done is put together a series of essays over the last 3 years relating to our unique position in the United States. And one of the things that has always interested me is American politics and how it's played out among the masses of people in this country. And on November 10th, 2010, I was struck by the fact that America had an election, a midterm election as they call it, in which the Republicans took back the House and were angling for the Senate, which they've accomplished a great amount of seats in the Senate. So to that end, I would like to read an essay that I wrote reflecting my views on that particular midterm election. On November 2nd, 2010, white Americans in general and white Republicans in particular sent a message to non-whites, especially black people. We want our country back. This midterm election was the first step in their plan. Capturing the White House in 2012 is the ultimate goal. With that said, allow me to explain how all of this came about. Since it's well known that most white Americans are infected with the disease called white superiority, they will from time to time act against their own best interests. Case in point, George W. Bush and his ilk. Keep in mind, it was Bush who showed the majority of white Americans that they were nothing but racial and economic pawns in service to the white ruling class. And yet, they refused to face the truth. Into this madness stepped Barack Obama. Going against common sense and racial reality, he ran for president. And against all odds, he won. Now, this is where the game called politics takes on an interesting turn. After being sworn in as the nation's 44th president, Obama was expected to clean up overnight the shit that Bush and company dumped on the American people. Mind you, he had only been president for 1 day. Such is the power of racial ignorance. Anyway, after 2 years in office, white people are fed up with Obama for not delivering the change we can believe in. If white people could see beyond their skin color, perhaps they would be able to grasp the following facts about America and how it's run. 1. There has never been a democracy in this nation. 2. Genocide and slavery for the majority of Americans, mentally speaking, is real and ongoing. 3. The insane doctrine known as white supremacy is a weapon that is used to blind the masses of white Americans to just how worthless they are to the white ruling class. 4. War and the prison industrial complex are the final solution to overpopulation in America. 5. The so-called white man's burden can only become less of a burden when he looks in the mirror. 6. The pedestal prison that robs the average white woman of her humanity needs to be understood by all women, especially black women. 7. Politics as usual is a myth and a curse. 8. The desire for money, making and spending it, supersedes common sense and rational thought. 9. The so-called war on terror is nothing but a smokescreen designed by the ruling class in order to strip the American people of what little personal freedom that they have left. Of course, the mass media is a willing partner. 10. This nation's most valuable asset, the children, are scorned and preyed upon by adults, thereby casting doubt on America's future. Taken as a whole, all of the above amounts to a betrayal of the American dream. What does all of this have to do with the midterm elections? Answer: everything. The false concept known as the American dream was a ploy designed by the rulers and implemented by the Republican Party over the last 100 years. At its core lies a set of principles which binds the American people to perpetual servitude. For example, 1. Hard work is its own reward. Who came up with that bullshit? Answer, the ruling class. Of course, they alone benefit from that ideal. 2, eat bread by the sweat of your brow. Translation, work like a dog as a wage slave to support a system that cares only about profit, or starve. 3, make your voice heard by voting. Voting for whom? The American people have been voting Democrat and Republican for generations, and yet very little has changed. 4, our way of life is the envy of the entire world. Let's see, genocide, slavery, mass ignorance, a corrupt two-party system, blatant lies, a war economy, racism, the prison industrial system, etc. That, my friends, is not the envy of the entire world. 5, capitalism is the greatest economic system ever devised. 5% of the population of this nation owns half of its assets and greatly influences the other half. Capitalism is about the economic control of the brain-dead American people, nothing more. 6, don't take your freedom for granted. Define freedom, a state of being enslaved without realizing it. The white Republicans and Democrats know full well that they're fucking with the simple minds of the American people. That's how they remain in power. So now, after all has been said and nothing's been done, allow me to offer a concrete, workable solution to black people's problems with this nation. Listen very carefully, enslaved black people. We must confront and own up to the obvious fact of our continued enslavement to this nation. Our unique position as footstools for every ethnic group in this nation reveals our enslavement. Unity is the key. We have been deceived by white America into believing that we're each other's worst enemy. That has to change. We must cease with the subservient, yes sir, boss mentality. It's self-defeating and it's gotten us nowhere. The trap of religion. Since slavery began for us in America, religion has been used as a weapon to control our minds, thereby making our masters sleep much easier at night. Of course, the rope and tree were never far behind. We need to keep religion in our hearts where it belongs and keep liberation from enslavement on our minds. We must put aside our so-called differences. When the white man went into Africa, he saw no reason to worry about which tribe was different from the other. All he saw was niggers. The comparison would be left up to his white American descendants. Put another way, when the white ruling class saw that for greater profit and better control of their black slaves, differences needed to be created, he did so, which we in turn have internalized and use against one another. We can escape the trap of promiscuous sex. Once we do, then we can reconcile with our spiritual side, which will lead to mental liberation. In other words, think above the waist. Our behavior has to be checked at the door. When did emulating the negative aspects of white people's so-called culture become socially acceptable within our ranks? We must rediscover our blackness. In closing, throughout history, human beings have solved their problems through peaceful means when it was possible, or war when it wasn't. In the case of so-called black Americans, we need to cease deluding ourselves into believing that the majority of white Americans will someday change their negative attitude towards us. Our blood-soaked slave history in this nation has proven the fallacy of that belief. Of course, the belief that the masses of black people will someday come to the realization that our only recourse is armed rebellion may seem foolish to some people, but given the present climate, it could happen. With this current generation of pants-on-the-ground insults scaring the shit out of white America, how long do you think it will take before they decide that genocide is the solution? At any rate, we need to prepare ourselves for James Baldwin's fire next time. Thank you very much.